Lloyd stayed bowed as the Queen stood a little above him on the steps, looking down at him. She informed him that she had heard of his deeds in the city of Cremo from the Count, and thanked him for the courage and selflessness he displayed that day, though she added that she would not follow the words of others blindly and would only trust what she witnessed herself. This was exactly what Lloyd expected. She stated that she would test his skills to determine his worthiness. Lloyd grinned, hidden under his lowered head. This was a chance for a bumper contract with Her Majesty. She asked which construction project he believed was the most urgent in the royal capital. Lloyd recognised the question as a test. He already knew the answer, having read the book. The Queen observed him closely, considering whether he was truly the capable individual she had been told about. In her mind, he should have recognised the correct answer upon arriving at the palace. If he failed here, she would not acknowledge him. Lloyd stated that the most urgent project was a new bridge over the Magenta River. The Queen looked at him in surprise. Lloyd understood that this was not the answer she expected, but he also knew she would demand his reasoning. She requested his explanation. Lloyd explained that others might argue the palace repairs were the most urgent. He noted the palace's history, the 2 dragon attacks that destroyed its towers, the reconstruction into a dome to prevent a third attack, and the flaw that followed. The dome was too heavy, causing the structure to sink and the supporting pillars beneath to deteriorate. He concluded that those repairs could be postponed, as they were not the most urgent concern. The Queen looked at him with surprise and irritation, thinking that he knew exactly what she had been expecting, yet intentionally gave a different answer. Lloyd remained still, aware that she understood he knew her intended choice, and that she recognised he had deliberately chosen otherwise. The Queen stared at him, thinking that she knew he had given a different answer, even though he knew the answer she had in mind. Lloyd realised she knew that she knew, and before it could spiral any further, the system cut in, irritated, putting an end to it. The Queen's aura pressed down on him with an intimidating weight. She found herself wondering if Lloyd was toying with her. Lloyd lifted his head and met her gaze with the innocent expression of a puppy. Lloyd explained why he chose the bridge. He stated that the bridge had been rebuilt 12 times already and collapsed regularly whenever the spring floods came. It was a constant inconvenience for the people. He added that if she allowed him, he would build a bridge that would stand no matter how severe the flood. In his mind, he was already thinking of a suspension bridge. The Queen considered his words and thought that he was an arrogant man who even criticised her past decisions. She wondered why, but found that when this insolent man spoke, she liked him even more. She asked him to tell her about the bridge he planned to build. Lloyd's grin twisted back into that maniacal shape as he thanked the Queen, his face still hidden under his bowed head. He understood her character well. She hated yes-men and valued those with strong convictions. He began rambling in technical detail, continuing without pause, until the Empress finally told him to stop, having lost interest. Lloyd knew the Queen's fate well. She would eventually be betrayed by the one she trusted most, and she would lose one of her arms as a consequence. After that, she would turn evil, her entire nature twisting, and she would become known throughout the Empire as the butchering tyrant. But that future was still 3 years away. Right now, she was an honourable ruler who would even listen to someone of the lowest standing. The Queen asked him what would happen if the bridge failed. Lloyd thought privately that he would run for his life, but told her she could have his head. He then asked that, in exchange, as long as the bridge stood, his family would be guaranteed their station. The Queen smiled unexpectedly, thinking that he had actually made her smile. She agreed to the arrangement and said he could construct the bridge. Lloyd shuffled closer while trying to maintain his bow, causing the Queen to watch him with confusion. He pulled out a scroll and lifted it toward her. She asked him what he was holding. Lloyd stated that it was a contract and asked her to sign it. She narrowed her eyes and asked him if he did not trust her word, thinking he had the nerve to prepare a contract in advance. Lloyd explained that he did trust her, but wanted a signed contract to hold himself responsible if he failed, and asked her to consider it a guarantee. The Queen signed it, knowing she was being sweet-talked into it but not minding for some reason. Lloyd took the signed scroll and bowed, his rear end pushed high into the air. She asked why he was sticking it up like that. Lloyd explained that he could not lower his head any further, so he raised his behind to make his bow seem lower. She told him she understood his intention, but did not wish to see it, and asked him to lower it. Lloyd and Javier left the throne room with a servant still escorting them through the halls. Even with the servant present, Lloyd could not hold himself back, and broke into a small celebratory dance over his new contract. He looked at Javier, thinking that he had just ripped off the Queen with that contract. Javier, somehow understanding, replied inwardly that Lloyd could have lost his head if it had gone badly. Back in the throne room, the Queen's knight commented that Lloyd was a clever man. The Queen asked if the knight had noticed as well, saying he was more shrewd than she had expected. The knight asked if she had been displeased by his behaviour. She admitted that she had been at first, since he came in acting as if he could beat her. But in the end he had seemed rather pathetic and adorable. A few days later, Lloyd set off to visit the city. Javier asked if he would be all right going alone, and Lloyd told him he would be in the capital city and had no need for an escort. He then scowled at Javier and said it was a huge pain walking around with him anyway, since all the women ogled him and he could not concentrate. Javier told him fine, and instructed him to say hello to young Master Julien. Lloyd waved him off, his mind already elsewhere. Julien Frontera was Lloyd's younger brother, currently studying at the Royal Academy. Before Lloyd had left for the capital, his mother had asked him to bring winter clothes and blankets for Julien, and to check on him. As Lloyd walked, he tried to recall what had happened to Julien in the book. It was around this time that the Baron lost everything, and could no longer pay for Julien's tuition, resulting in him being kicked out of the dorms. Not long after that, he was found in an alley, killed by a thief. That would not happen now. Lloyd told himself he was pretty amazing for saving multiple lives already. He arrived at the academy and thought it was time to see his little brother, then immediately froze as he realised he had no idea what Julien even looked like. As Lloyd entered the academy, an angry-looking boy approached him and demanded to know what he was doing there. Lloyd looked at him and assumed this must be his brother, though he certainly did not look like someone Javier's age. He wondered what kind of piece of work the original Lloyd had been to receive a glare like that from his own brother. He considered whether he should maintain the pretense of being a lousy brother to avoid suspicion. He tossed the bag he was carrying at Julien, saying it had been sent by their mother, doing his best to keep up the act. Julien glared at him and wondered why Lloyd had not called him little brat, then questioned why Lloyd had listened to their parents at all. The system immediately sounded an alarm, warning Lloyd that his brother's suspicion was growing. Lloyd wondered if he had really been too nice just then, and questioned what on earth the previous Lloyd had been like. He scowled at Julien and turned away, calling him little brat. Even then, the system warned him that the suspicion was still increasing. Lloyd wondered what he needed to do to stop the suspicion. Perhaps sock him in the head. Then he remembered his mother's request. She had asked him to take Julien to lunch, saying he must be lonely. Lloyd stopped himself and smacked his own head in annoyance. He then turned back and asked his brother where the fanciest restaurant around was. Julien asked him why he wanted to know. Lloyd told him he had to buy him lunch, calling him little brat to keep the act going. Julien asked him why again, and Lloyd replied that their mother had asked him to. Julien stared at him, his suspicion still growing. They went to a restaurant and sat opposite each other at the table. Julien immediately chose the cheapest meal on the menu. Lloyd scowled at him and told him to order something expensive, saying he did not get the chance to eat in places like this often. Julien glared at him, and Lloyd called him a little brat. Julien realised Lloyd had forgotten to call him that earlier, and had only corrected himself just now. Then he ordered one of the special meals. Julian wondered why Lloyd was acting so normal. He was certain Lloyd used to curse far more and would kick him just for looking at him the wrong way. Lloyd ordered his meal, and the waiter asked if he wanted a drink as well. Lloyd refused, saying he did not drink. Julian was stunned. His brother used to drink all day and get rowdy wherever he went. Then he remembered hearing something a few days ago. Someone from the palace had told him that Lloyd had defeated a monster that attacked the city of Cremo. He had not believed a word of it, assuming his brother had stolen the credit at best. But looking at Lloyd now, he wondered if the rumours were true. Lloyd seemed like a completely different person. Suddenly, someone smacked Julian on the back of the head from behind. A student demanded to know what he thought he was doing there. Julian nervously apologised, saying something had come up. He told Julian that Baron's scum should not be eating in a place like this, claiming they might offend the other guests. Lloyd looked up, irritated by the remark. The student continued, saying Julian's family was nothing and he should not think himself special just because he attended the Royal Academy. He insulted the Frontera barony again. Listening, Lloyd realised the academy was ruled by family status. Students from lower-ranking houses must irritate the others just by existing. He wondered if he should help his brother, then wondered if that would only draw more suspicion. He glanced at Julian, whose tense expression clearly told him not to interfere. Lloyd noticed faint bruises hidden under Julian's clothing and understood this must be a common occurrence. The student then identified himself as the son of Viscount Lacona, and Lloyd's eyes widened. He sat there scheming as his mind raced. Then that maniacal grin returned as he finished forming his thought. Lloyd stood up and walked over to the student, asking what his father did for a living. The student boasted that his father was the wise Viscount Lacona, then demanded to know why Lloyd cared and whether he was related to this trash, glancing down at Julian. He began speaking down to Lloyd as well, but before he knew what was happening, Lloyd slapped him so hard that he spun through the air, a tooth flying loose as he crashed across the floor and hit the wall. Lloyd named his attack "Mana Bitch Slap," but the system immediately informed him that it was not a real skill. One of the student's friends stood up, declaring that Lloyd had dared to attack a member of the elite union. He marched toward Lloyd, but Lloyd slapped him aside as well. A towering student as large as a bear rose next, threatening Lloyd, but Lloyd slapped him away without hesitation. Two twins stood up together, claiming he would not stand a chance against their combined assault. Lloyd raised both hands and slapped them both simultaneously, knocking them both out. He then turned to another student who had been talking earlier, saying he had heard him running his mouth as well. The student tried to deny it, but Lloyd slapped him too. Two more students remained seated, shaking. They insisted they had not said anything. Lloyd glared at them, saying he had heard them giggling, then backhanded both, sending teeth flying. The Lacona's son managed to get back up and attempted a surprise attack from behind, leaping forward with a punch. Lloyd turned and took the punch directly to the face. The man began to laugh, thinking he had won, but his expression dropped immediately as Lloyd remained standing, smiling. He attempted to apologise, but Lloyd's face twisted into that familiar maniacal grin. Lloyd grabbed him by the collar and headbutted the man over and over. Julian watched in horror, wondering if Lloyd had lost his mind. He turned toward the man who had been sitting at the bar earlier, the vice superintendent, but the man was already gone. Lloyd continued the assault, saying he had no idea what he had just done. He mocked his earlier words about the wise Viscount Lacona, calling it nonsense, then added that the saying was true, like father, like son. The man choked out that Lloyd had crossed the line and would regret talking badly about his father as Lloyd dragged his face across the wall. Lloyd slammed his head into the wall and asked if he thought bullying was acceptable, calling him scum. Then he struck his head against the wall repeatedly, saying the only reason he was a bully was because no one had been there to knock sense into him. Julian tried to stop him, grabbing Lloyd from behind and begging him to stop. He said the bullying would only get worse after this. Lloyd paused and asked if Julian really believed it would get worse, then told him not to worry, with a bright smile. The gentle expression made his words even more disturbing, as he added that if he died, he would not be able to bully anyone anymore. Julian looked at him, shaken, wondering how someone could smile so gently while saying something so terrifying. Lloyd continued his assault, thinking he had seen plenty of people like this back in high school. The best solution was always the same: put the fear of death into them. A sudden voice shouted, demanding that he stop. Lloyd halted his assault and looked over his shoulder to see armed guards pointing their spears at him, with a group of academy men standing behind them. An older man stepped forward and demanded to know the meaning of his actions. Lloyd paused, lowering the battered man by his hair. Julian watched anxiously, wondering if Lloyd planned to fight the guards as well. If he tried that, he would surely die. Instead, Lloyd turned and bowed, introducing himself as the eldest son of Baron Frontera and brother of young Julian. He introduced himself as Lloyd Frontera. Julian was surprised by how composed he appeared despite the situation. Lloyd stepped forward and bowed again, apologising for the commotion, and stated that he had merely been attempting to restore Her Majesty's honour. The older man dismissed the claim as ridiculous and demanded to know who had dared to sully Her Majesty's name. Lloyd looked down at the swollen man's face and stated that this was the son of the Lacona family. He had abused Julian and humiliated him in front of the guests. Lloyd then called toward the man who had stood at the bar earlier, saying he had seen everything yet had done nothing. In Lloyd's mind, the reasoning was obvious. The academy staff were all beholden to the nobility, which is why the man had not intervened. The students formed cliques based on the rank of their families and held too much influence within the academy. Lloyd concluded that every man present must have already known Julian was being bullied. The man replied that even if what Lloyd claimed had occurred, he did not see what any of it had to do with Her Majesty. Lloyd reached into his inner pocket and stated that an insult to his brother was an insult to him. He then produced the royal seal given only to special guests invited by the royal family. The men gasped in shock and immediately knelt, proclaiming their devotion to Her Royal Highness. Lloyd walked past them casually, saying they now understood the situation and that he would be taking his leave. The older man gave Lloyd a side glance, thinking that Lloyd's elevated status was temporary and that they could simply punish Julian later. Lloyd stopped mid-step, as if he had heard the thought. He turned and smiled at him menacingly before walking away again. The older man stiffened, wondering why Lloyd had looked at him with a gaze that felt murderous. Lloyd told his brother it was time to go as they left the restaurant together. As they walked, Julian asked Lloyd where they were going. Lloyd told him they were heading to the administrator's office. Julian asked why. Lloyd replied that he was going to request a leave of absence for him. Julian stopped immediately upon hearing the words. Anger flooded his face as he demanded to know how much more of his life Lloyd intended to ruin. He said that after what had happened, the bullying would only worsen, and now Lloyd wanted to stop him from attending school entirely. He shouted, asking why Lloyd was doing this to him. Lloyd told him that the academy would not be a great place to study for a while, and that he should take the opportunity to get his body into shape. Julian stared at him in confusion, asking what he meant. Lloyd smiled and told him that in order to do construction, he would need muscles. Back at the royal guest quarters, Julian spoke with Javier about the events at the academy. Javier reassured him that if Lloyd claimed he had a plan to deal with the situation, then he should trust him. Julian stared at him in disbelief, questioning why he would trust Lloyd of all people. He reminded Javier of the kind of person Lloyd had always been. Javier asked if Julian trusted his own word instead. He explained that it was Lloyd's plan that had saved the city of Cremo, and that Lloyd himself had delivered the finishing blow. He went on to describe the impressive things Lloyd had built for the estate, mentioning that Lloyd had even paid off half of the Baron's debt, and Julian listened in shock as Javier listed accomplishment after accomplishment. Javier then asked him to trust his brother. Just outside, Lloyd was about to enter when he heard Javier's words referring to him as their saviour. He paused with his hand on the door, looking pleased by the unexpected praise. Inside, Julian admitted that trusting Lloyd was difficult. He remembered him as an abusive drunk. Javier added that Lloyd had also been unintelligent and uncivilized. Julian followed by calling him human trash. Just outside the door, Lloyd's expression shifted, clearly wounded by the harsh words. Julian then asked whether someone like that could truly change. Javier told him such a transformation was impossible, and said he suspected that Lloyd was not Lloyd at all.